Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Statistics Solutions webinar. My name is Justin D'Souza. I'm a quantitative specialist here at Statistics Solutions. During today's webinar, we are going to discuss preparation for quantitative defenses. So I'm going to go through the entire presentation first, and then I will do a Q&A session at the end. My colleague Sierra has already started putting some hyperlinks in the chat box. If you have any questions about the services that we provide, you can schedule a free consultation. And she's also provided some web links for the webinars that we've done previously, in addition to free dissertation resources. And we will be sending everybody a copy of the PowerPoint and a copy of the recording for today's. So I'll give a brief overview of the services that we provide at our company, Statistics Solutions. Then we will discuss preparation for quantitative defense. We'll conclude with a summary, and I'll show a couple examples of previous defenses that I've worked with. Then we'll do a Q&A session at the end. So on this slide, you can see all the different components that our company assists with. Starting with topic development and going all the way to final defense, including journal publications. So the way our company works is we have both literature review specialists and methodologists, both quantitative and qualitative. So depending on where you need assistance, we will provide 1 or 2 specialists to you, even 3 potentially if you're doing a mixed method study. So you can see we can help you frame research questions, determine a gap in the literature, identify a theoretical framework, kind of decide what is the minimum sample size that you need to target by running a power analysis. So the proposal chapters are right here, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th bullet point, the introduction, lit review, and the methodology. And then we go into IRB assistance if you need help filling out your IRB forms. We have data entry templates that we can provide to you if you're doing a self-report survey. And we have a SurveyMonkey account on file, so we can help host a survey for you. And then we help with the results chapter, both quantitative and qualitative, in which we can help crunch your numbers and present an APA write-up for you. And then we can assist with the discussion chapter, PowerPoints for both proposal and final defenses, and we can help condense your chapter into a journal publication once you're complete. If you have any questions, you can give us a call at 727-442-4290. On this slide, I think Sierra already provided these hyperlinks, but you can see the previous webinars that we've done, and you can see what webinars we will be doing. So most colleges have a proposal and final defense. A proposal, as I mentioned a couple slides ago, includes the introduction, lit review, and the methodology. I've seen some universities that don't have a proposal defense and they only do a final defense. So a final defense is going to encompass really everything, the full dissertation, but most do a proposal and a final defense. So within the proposal defense, you want to summarize the key points from these chapters, really focus on providing background on why the study is being conducted. What new information are you providing in your research that nobody has provided before, which is essentially identifying the gap in the literature. Then you need to explain the methodology for the proposed. So the methodology, it hasn't been conducted yet. You haven't collected data, so most of the information will be written in future tense. You will be administering a survey, you will be analyzing the data. It's written in future tense because you probably don't have IRB approval just yet. And then when you get to the final defense, this is really summarizing the full dissertation, now incorporating the results and discussion chapters. And a lot of the same information will be used from the proposal defense, which is great. You just need to copy and paste the same information, but you're going to shift it to past tense. And you want to try and condense it as much as possible. You don't want to focus so much on the proposal chapters during the final defense. It's more about the results. What are the results of the findings showing statistically? Did you prove that you had a significant relationship or not? Or did you have significant differences between groups? And then you need to explain the implications of these findings in the context of existing literature. Did your findings confirm what previous researchers found, or did you find something brand new? So in terms of preparation, you want to ask your school for a template to the proposal and final defense. I would not recommend just creating a PowerPoint on the fly. Look for something that's been previously approved. So ask your committee, ask your chair, your methodologist, if they have any examples that they have been on a committee on previously, and just mirror the same exact order of the slides, the presentation, so they're not thrown into a curve, as to what you're trying. Note if there's a minimum or maximum slide count. In general, I see 20 slides as the minimum. Sometimes there isn't a maximum count, but I say don't go beyond 30 slides if possible. And identify if you have a minimum or maximum time length for the presentation as well. Usually I see it around 30 minutes. 30 to 40 minutes is probably the average, even accounting for questions at the end of the presentation. And ahead of time, even before you do the defense, I would send a PowerPoint to your committee so they can see the organization of the slides and ask them what questions you can anticipate, because there will be a question and answer session at the end. And it's good to prepare for those questions. You don't want to have a curveball question and not have an answer ready. Most committees are happy to provide the types of questions that they will ask. Here's a sample template, and this is for a final defense. It even incorporates the proposal defense as well. So the proposal defense would go from the problem statement, purpose statement, theoretical foundation, population and sample, research method and design, research questions and data collection, and then what analyses are you going to use to address your questions. So the proposal defense will stop around here. Maybe a couple extra slides about limitations and delimitations, assumptions of the research, ethical considerations, keeping everything anonymous or confidential. That might be one of the last slides for the proposal defense. And then for the final defense, these are the two key bullet points that we're adding: the research results. What did the findings show? Do you confirm, or do you reject, or do you fail to reject your hypotheses? And then jump into implications, so tying your research results back to the literature. And then, a good way to conclude is recommendations for future research. What can researchers do in the future to expand on your topic? So since COVID-19, I've seen a lot of studies and defenses are done remotely. And honestly, I think that gives you a big advantage in that you can print out the entire dissertation, have it right next to you, and you can highlight key sections that you want to discuss. You can have note cards of the key talking points that you want to discuss on each slide. And you can test out the logistics of the software that you're going to use, whether that's Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet. You can record those sessions, maybe do a mock defense with your committee member so you can better prepare. However, some universities still do present in person. So if you do this, a lot of the same bullet points here do apply. You can still print out your dissertation. You can still have note cards. You can have note cards of talking points. But you need to familiarize yourself with the equipment you're going to be using. If it's a projector, do you need to bring the PowerPoint on a USB or an HDMI cable? Are you using Microsoft PowerPoint or a different software together? Okay, so I do have a couple examples here of defenses. The first one here is a proposal defense, and this was at GCU. GCU has a template And you'll put the, you need to put your committee members' names, the name of the topic. And I'll just go through the slides really quickly. So you can see we have an introduction, then you go into the background and gap of the study. What is the gap in the literature? Then you go into the theoretical framework or the conceptual framework and include a model, a visual model of the framework if you can. Then we go into the problem statement. And I should mention that, before I went into the presentation mode. You can see there are talking points at the bottom here. So this would be useful for you. Once you print out the PowerPoint, it's going to give you these talking points on the side, but you won't see them in presentation mode. So we go problem statement, purpose statement, then the research questions with the accompanying hypotheses. Then go into your research method and design. Okay, so this is more my area of expertise, is quantitative methodology and results. So in this component, I would say you need to justify why you selected quantitative. Perhaps everything you're using, if you're using a self-report survey, it's probably numerically measurable, meaning quantitative is the best approach. If you're using like the MLQ or the job satisfaction survey, those all give numerical scores. So quantitative is the best approach for those. And then go into your research design. Underneath quantitative methods, you have correlational designs, predictive designs, experimental, quasi-experimental. You'll need to justify why you're selecting that specific design, and also discuss as talking points why you did not select qualitative or a mixed methods design. If you're not conducting interviews or you're not looking, excuse me, if you're not looking at open-ended responses, then qualitative is not going to be the right approach. But you also want to justify why other designs were not used. This is usually in the methodology chapter. A lot of this is just copying and pasting. Most colleges require a justification for why other methods or designs were not used. Have those ready as talking points. Then it's good to include a variable table, so you can see all the variables of interest. Are they independent or dependent variables? What is the survey instrument that is measuring all these tools? And what is the measurement level? If you have nominal, interval, or ordinal variables of interest. You can also include another column here that includes the possible values for these. What are the range of scores? Do scores range from 1 to 5 or 1 to 10? Testing time, is that pre-test, post-test, or do you have pre-test, post-test follow-up? Things like that. Then go into the population and sample. So identify who the general population is. Who are you generalizing your findings to? How many people comprise of this population? And then you need to provide, most likely if you're doing a quantitative study and you're doing hypothesis testing, you need to run a power analysis, which is going to give you the minimum sample size target for your research. So it's important to provide that sample size estimate. And usually after you run a power analysis, you need to add 10 to 15% to that number to account for attrition or non-responses, or if you're doing a pre-test, post-test, accounting for people not returning for the post-test. Then it goes a little bit more into sampling. This kind of dives into data collection procedures. So this person was using convenience sampling. There are many types of sampling, though. You have snowball sampling, you have quota sampling, random sampling. You need to justify why that approach is being used. What are the methods you're using to collect data? Recruitment through flyers and posters. Maybe you're using an online platform like LinkedIn or Facebook to target people. Or maybe you're using SurveyMonkey and Qualtrics. They can target people for you. We have ethical considerations at the bottom here. Then you can go into the instrumentation. So this person, before she gets to her key instrument, she has a demographic questionnaire to collect gender, ethnicity, grade level, things like that. Not every study needs a demographic questionnaire, but if you do use one, it's important to mention it. Then we go into the key instrumentation. And for this, you need to identify if it's using Likert scale questions, are they multiple choice, maybe fill in the blank, how many items are on this survey, and what are the Likert scales ranging from. In this example, we have 1 to 5. We have 2 formats of 1 to 5 questions. And then we go into subscales. So, this questionnaire had 20 items, but those 20 items divide into 5 different subscales. So you need to mention that the survey is measuring an overall component or an overall composite score, or is it measuring different factors? So here I don't usually see this, but this is a pretty good visual aid to see, the recruitment process, to informational meetings, to the initial meeting, and then doing a pre-test, post-test follow-up. But this can be done in bullet point form as well. Then you go into data analysis procedures. So here is where I would personally add a little bit more here. What software are you using to crunch your numbers? SPSS, Data, SAS, Excel. Identifying how you're going to clean the data. Are you going to remove people altogether who don't respond to certain questions? Are you going to use imputation to replace missing responses? What descriptive statistics are you going to use? For things like demographics, gender, age, ethnicity, you can use frequency distributions. For continuous variables, from this person's survey instrument, engagement, perseverance, optimism, you'll most likely present means, standard deviations, statistics like that. And then you can discuss if you're going to evaluate reliability. So most studies, when you're using a previously validated survey, most of them have been established as reliable and valid tools, but oftentimes it is important to establish reliability for your study. Okay. Then you go research question by research question. How is each research question going to be addressed? And in this example, this person was using a repeated measures of ANOVA to look at differences over time. And whenever you do a test of significance like this, you need to present the assumptions that are going to be checked. Sometimes you don't need this level of detail. This level of detail would be good for the dissertation. I've seen some students just say that, hey, we're going to run a repeated measures of ANOVA, and we're going to check the assumptions before running it. You don't necessarily have to go into all these different assumptions one by one. But she did. So she goes through each of the 3, or there are 7 assumptions for repeated measures of ANOVA. She goes through every one and how they're going to be checked. Check with your committee if you need this level of detail or not. Okay, then you go into specifically how the ANOVA is going to be conducted, or whatever analysis you're going to use. If you have significant results, what does that mean? You're going to run any post hoc or additional analyses after the fact? And what level of significance are you going to use? Usually this is 0.05. If you have a p-value below 0.05, then you have evidence of a significant relationship or a significant difference. But in this case, something that's called a Bonferroni correction was applied because she has 5 subscales. So that 0.05 was divided by 5, meaning the new alpha level is 0.01. And then you go into key references. So this was a proposal defense. Final defense looks very similar. I have a different topic here. So we'll just go through, the introductory slides are very similar. problem statement through the data analysis procedures, that's all the same as the proposal defense, but you shift it to past tense. Okay, so problem statement, purpose, theory, population, sample, all this is the same. Then we get into research results. So if you can, just put the entire demographic table in here so you can see the distribution by gender, by age, ethnicity, give a definitive count of what the final sample size was. Here we have a table for the continuous variables of interest. So you can see the minimum score, the maximum score, the mean, and the standard deviation. Then we present the assumption checks. So this was a test of normality to see if the assumption was following a bell-shaped curve. And then we go into the research question. What did the research question show? And I should go back a slide because here, just to briefly explain this, normality was not supported here. And this person originally proposed to run Pearson correlations, if you read this final bullet point. So because normality was not supported, we shifted from a Pearson correlation to a Spearman correlation. So if that ever happens, if you go from a parametric to a non-parametric test, you'll want to explain that step and why it happened. So here we report the findings of the correlations. We did not find a significant association between the variables of interest for this question. And you want to conclude with a definitive statement about your hypothesis. Is your null hypothesis rejected? Do you fail to reject it, or is it partially rejected? In this example, it was partially rejected because we have 3 different correlations, and one of the 3 was significant. So that is why we partially rejected in this case. Kind of a rare scenario. You don't see that too often. Then you go into the literature. So what are the implications of the findings? How does this impact future studies? What does this mean for your topic or your industry in general? And then you go into conclusions and a question and answer session. But yeah, that's a proposal and final defense. I'll now open up the session for questions if we have any. So you can type those into the Q&A box or the chat box. And I did see a couple people join late. We will be sending a copy of the recording to everyone. Do we have any questions about quantitative methodologies or interpretation or statistic analysis? Okay, we have a question from Simone. She asked, what is the best way to display ORs? I'm assuming that's odds ratios in a table for presentation. Let me see if I have an example here. It's going to be really the APA tables that you used for, I'm assuming you did a logistic regression. Trying to find one here. Let's see. Oops. See if this is an example. So this is kind of an APA table for a regression. Let's see. There were some strange odds ratios for this example, assuming yours will not look like this. But you can just present the full table, maybe on the whole slide. and then have talking points to specifically discuss what was and what was not significant and what the odds ratios for those were. Okay, so I would just put the full table in there. Don't just focus on the odds ratios, or if anything, put the predictors, the p-value, and the odds ratio. So you could exclude these three columns potentially and just include variable, p-value, odds ratio. Okay. Do we have any other questions? We have a comment from Deborah: formatting for tables in the dissertation to switch to landscape within the document to keep tables together for certain analyses. I'm not sure if that's a follow-up to the previous question. But yeah, you can switch to landscape. For some tables, maybe lower the font size. Yeah, you can absolutely, it doesn't have to mirror exactly what's in your dissertation. You can shift the tables around so it's better presentable in the PowerPoint. Whether that's shifting it to landscape, making the table smaller, or reducing the font size. Okay, do we have any other questions? All right, well, thanks so much for joining, everyone. Come join us for our future sessions and let us know if you have any questions. Have a great evening.